Hello everyone, I'm Drachona, and I just wanted to talk real quick about the Google homepage that I just opened and saw their most recent doodle, which is where they trade the Google, Google, for some picture that, in some way it spells out Google. Usually it might be because of somebody's birthday, even if they're dead, just kind of recognition of them, some significant event. uh, Various things. We've seen them every time that we open Google. But this one is a doodle for Google. Now, my understanding is that these doodles are done by kids who are younger. I think it's open to kids who are like 12 or 13 and under. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's like 15 or 16. They're generally kids or younger teenagers. So I don't know the age of the kid who did this particular doodle, but I just wanted to talk about it because nothing against the kid. I'm not blaming the kid for this, and it's really not that big of a deal. I just wanted to point out the image that this presents, especially because this image is called a peaceful future. I want you to keep that in mind. It's called a peaceful future. This is an image of the future. So this is the Google homepage right now. This is what is called a peaceful future. Now, I mean, if you just kind of look at this collection of characters, you see people holding up, like, I love you, there's somebody making a heart, and these people are, they're kind of hanging out together, they're happy. It's cool. I mean, if you just kind of look at their faces, you look at the smiles, you look at the gestures, things like that, this is good. There's nothing really wrong about this. What bothers me is the identity politics that's clearly being presented here. And like I said, my understanding is that these are done by kids. So I'm guessing this was a young kid, maybe a teenager, I don't know, who did this, which kind of bothers me. It bothers me that kids are receiving these ideas. So what do we have here? Okay, so far to the left, we have a kid in a wheelchair. I mean, generally looks white, could be Hispanic, but I mean, just generally looks white, but he's in a wheelchair. He's disabled. Okay. Next to that, we have a Bo Burnham character who has the G, but it's rainbow, so I'm going to take a wild guess and assume that this is a representation of someone being gay. I can't quite tell, but it looks like there's something wrong with his right arm. I don't know if it's... I mean, it almost looks like he's disabled himself, but maybe it's not supposed to look like that. I'm guessing he's supposed to be gay. So he's representing the LGBTQ community. I mean, he is a white guy, but of course, something you kind of get by watching like BuzzFeed videos and shit like that is the only time they will ever fairly represent somebody who is white and male is if they are not straight. Basically, if you are a straight white male, you are just assumed to be the most privileged person on the planet. And so I guess it's not okay to represent you at all. And if you represent at all, it's unfairly. It's guys who pretend to represent straight white males, like the freaking BuzzFeed, whatever, 2017 resolutions for white guys. So anyway, next to that, you have a girl who is wearing a hijab, and obviously, so with the symbol on her sweatshirt or whatever, so she represents people who are Muslim. Okay, not really anything wrong with that. Then the girl next to her has the Star of David, so Jewish, generally white, but okay, so she's Jewish. The boy, I'm assuming, I mean, generally male, next to her, I'm going to get in so much trouble for assuming genders of these non-existent characters, these people who do not exist. So the male, I guess, next to her has the... I think that's the transgender symbol. That's the male and female symbol combined. So, I suppose I need to do my research. I mean, I'm assuming that's not bisexual. I'm assuming that's transgender. I should know. I have a transgender friend. I should go ask her. But so I'm guessing that's supposed to represent transgender community. So you got two different representations for LGBTQ. Then next to him or her, next to them, is a girl in a skirt with the cross on her sweatshirt. I don't know if that's supposed to represent like Catholic school dress. So she's obviously representing Christianity, Catholicism in general. Interesting that she wouldn't be next to the other two religions. And also, those three religions are not the only ones in the world. If you really want to be all-inclusive, you would need like millions of people to represent all the different groups of people. This is really arbitrary. But again, I know this is just some kid, or at least my understanding is that this is some kid. Then next to her, you have a young boy who is dark-skinned, and he's got the E, and it says E equals. I mean, when I see that, I think E equals MC squared. But I don't know if that's supposed to be like E for equality. That's conjecture there, but I don't know why the equal sign would be there. I guess because if it was just an E, it wouldn't really make sense. And then all the way to the right, we have kind of looks like, I can't tell if it looks like it's supposed to be a boy, but I can't quite tell. It almost looks like there are like wrinkles on his face, like maybe he's supposed to be older, and there's a little bit of like salt and pepper going on in his hair. But it looks like, let's say it's a boy who is that supposed to be Hispanic? I guess maybe Hispanic, or I mean, it looks like he's almost got like flowers around his neck. I mean, I don't know, but clearly not just like European white necessarily. I mean, although Spain is, but point being, not like a, Germano-French white person generally, or whatever, but has a cane. So maybe that is supposed to be somebody who's older. So maybe, is this supposed to be a representation like older people, or is it like disabled people again? I don't know. But clearly just kind of the whole set of playing cards is here. Basically, anybody who is not an able-bodied, straight white male is represented here. And honestly, like I said, still not everybody. This is just kind of a collection of people. There's actually more of a focus on religion than any other particular group. But I just thought this was kind of interesting. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the idea presented here. I mean, if you cover up their shirts, that's fine. Look at that. Oh, wow, look, they're all happy. They're hanging out. That's cool. I mean, it's like holding hands and singing Kumbaya. It's like this perfect image of the entire world getting together and, enjoying each other's company, being able to interact independent of religion, independent of sexual orientation, independent of race, independent of whether or not you're in a wheelchair, independent of whether you're able-bodied or not, independent of any of those factors just based on personality. And that's a really good image, but when you put the symbols on their shirts, when you highlight the fact that they are a part of this group, that doesn't really make it seem as cohesive. I mean, I find it ironic that these people who want equality, they want recognition, but they want certain things to be normalized. But it's like, well, if you want something to be normalized, if you want something to be equal, then it has to be treated just like everything else. Equality only exists once you no longer have these symbols on your shirts. Do you understand that? Do you understand that you can still be gay and not have to not tell everyone that, hey, you have to recognize the fact that I'm gay. Just like you can be Christian, you can be Jewish, you can be Muslim, you can be, obviously, if you're like black or white, that's kind of obvious. Or if you're in a wheelchair, that's kind of obvious. If you're transgender, there are things you don't have to tell everyone. Not everyone has to know that thing about you for you to be comfortable in your own skin. I'm speaking from personal experience here because I can say that I know multiple groups of people who go through the same shit who are not represented in this image, and I'm not mad about that. I'm just saying that equality and normalization of things that are generally different, that do not represent the majority, only comes once we treat people like just other people. We treat them based on their actions, based on their personality. You can't do that if everybody's walking around with a shirt that freaking points out, hey, I'm a part of this group that you're not a part of. You're reinforcing the lines between you and other people that you are supposedly trying to take away. You say that you want people to get together, to work together, and to see past these lines, but then you simultaneously reinforce those lines. I understand that at first you have to stand out, you have to raise your voice, you have to point out, hey, we're here, this is who we are, just acknowledge us, don't tolerate us, accept us. I understand that. I know about that. But eventually, you have to remove those divisions. You have to remove those lines. You can still be different, but you don't have to, every time you talk to somebody, you don't have to establish the differences between you and somebody else. You don't have to say, well, where are you from? I'm from Wisconsin. How about you? Well, I'm transgender. It's like, oh, okay. That wasn't what we were talking about, but okay. Like I said, the image itself is harmless, especially if you just cover up the symbols on their shirts. There's nothing wrong with the message here in general. I'm just worried because when I look at this, I'm thinking if some kid drew this and they think, yeah, this is a peaceful future, even though what they're representing here pretty much already exists. These groups of people already commingle and get along. The problem is, just as this image represents, these people tend to cooperate, tend to come together and work together to the exclusion of people who are not in their group. Anyone who is not a part of their group, individually or collectively, is excluded. So yeah, this is a peaceful future for them, but I can't help but notice that I don't see anyone who is an able-bodied straight white man. I mean, like, the girl who's Christian, she's, you could presume that she is a straight white female. She just happens to be Christian. And I know I'm taking something that's generally innocuous and inflating it, but the reason why this bugs me is because this image right here, this is not the future. This is not an image of the future. This is actually more of an image of the present. But what it is a prediction of what the future could be like. I've argued with people before about the concept of the pendulum swinging back and forth. We've talked about the way that black people were treated in the past versus the way that they're treated now, the way that white people in general, not all, but the way that some white people were in the past versus how they are now. And I've said, okay, if bad things happened in the past, wouldn't progress be to stop the pendulum before it swings all the way to the other extreme? Because the other extreme, the exact other extreme, is that white people are slaves, that they become generally subhuman. That is the other extreme, that white people lose their rights. So my question was, and has been, how far does the pendulum swing? Because if you really want to progress, you have to stop it at some point. You have to stop in the middle. You have to be the mature ones to stand up and go, you know what? Some horrible shit was done to people who looked like me, or who acted like me, or who thought like me in the past. And that was wrong. However, the answer is not to do to you what people who looked like you did to people who looked, or like I said, acted like me. That is not the solution. The solution is to stop the cycle of hatred, of violence, of non-acceptance right in its tracks and balance out in the middle. To be the mature ones, to be the adults who say, you know what? Equality is more important than revenge. Because that's all this is. If you start talking about treating white people like they're pieces of shit, holding people now responsible for things that happened before, way before you were even born, that's revenge. That's not equality. That's revenge. If you're treating people differently based solely on their skin color, based solely on their sexual orientation, based solely on some random factor about them that doesn't even really tie to how they act or what they think, you are the problem. And you are inherently against equality. I know this isn't that big of a deal, but I'm just worried. I'm worried for myself, but I'm also worried for the kids that I hope to have someday. I'm worried that someday this will be their reality. That this happy image that is otherwise really nice, it's really heartwarming, they're going to look at it, that this is going to be their society. This is going to be their society, and if they happen to be straight, white, and especially male, they're going to look at this and think, well, where do I fit in? Where's the person who looks like me? Which not only reinforces those elements for them, makes them realize how important, apparently, it is that they're white, or that they're straight, or that they're male, or whatever. It doesn't just exclude them from society, it reinforces these superficial characteristics and makes them think that they're more important than they really are. You know, for people who go on and on about social constructs, meanwhile not really understanding how social constructs work, like, for example, the fact that something can be both a physical reality and a social fabrication, that it can be something we invented, but it can still have real-world consequences, people who present images like this clearly don't understand that they are creating social constructs that have real-world consequences. You are taking things that you yourself call social constructs and making them more valid, making them more meaningful. You are making the arbitrary color of someone's skin more meaningful, more valuable than their personality and their actions. You are making it more important now that somebody is generally lighter skinned or generally darker skinned, even if within that group there's just as much diversity as there is between groups. Because that's how humans work. There's so much diversity, and you are trying to reinforce these arbitrary, ridiculous lines that ultimately have no fucking meaning, all supposedly for equality, for the betterment of society, or even just for the advantage of these particular groups, who you are marginalizing, ironically, who you are making abnormal instead of normalizing them. You are setting these people apart, and you are putting giant neon signs and flags around them saying, I am different, I am not like you. And yet, you want to fit into society, and yet, you claim to want equality, even though all you ever campaign for is being unique, being separate, and getting special treatment. You people are fucking idiots. And this image is the direct result of that. You are, knowingly or not, indoctrinating children with these stupid ideas that should have died hundreds of years ago, that are actually slowly dying right now, but you are the ones who are bringing them back. You are the ones who are validating them, who are giving them more weight. You are the source of the problem. You are not helping anyone, not even yourselves. And sooner or later, once you defeat your imagined enemies, you're going to start tearing each other apart, like you already are, about who is more or less of a Scotsman. You people should be ashamed of yourselves. Not just because of what you're doing to yourselves, to other adults, but because of what you're doing to kids. The ones who are going to inherit this world once you are dead. They are going to have to pick up the intellectual slack that you've left behind. They are going to have to deal with a world that is significantly overpopulated, where resources are not only decreasing in amount, but also decreasing in quality, all the while trying to deal with the incredibly fucked up social concepts that you have given to them. These imagined structures of importance based on skin color, based on whether or not you're disabled, based on what religion you are or aren't. And I could rant about this for a long time. As usual, I've gone on longer than I originally planned because I struck my own nerve. I got into something that really irritates me, but it's because of what this image represents. I feel bad because I'm shouting at this image of kids smiling and enjoying each other's company. I feel bad, but it's because of what this image represents right now. It's because of all this social justice bullshit, this regressive left bullshit, and it annoys the shit out of me. I don't like the fact that these ideas are getting to the minds of kids who are too young to understand what's going on. They start valuing the lives of people who are gay, the lives of people who are transgender, the lives of people who are Islamic more than other people. And that's fucked up. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't value someone's life more than someone else's. You should just treat people based on how they act. Treat them appropriately based on what they think and what they do. Treat them like fucking people, independent of their skin, their religion, anything about their physicality that they can't control, or about the culture that they grew up in. Treat them as individuals. Good God, for being the West, for being supposedly so individually focused, at least, from an anthropological perspective, we are very focused on the individual. For some reason, we seem to hate individuality now. We seem to be moving away from that. More towards, well, if one white person did it, then I guess all white people, act that way. Echoing the stupid idea like back in the day where it's like, well, if one black person is that way, then all black people are that way. Like I said, you people are not just ignorant and at the same time incredibly arrogant about your ignorance. You're dangerous. You're dangerous to yourselves, and you're dangerous to other people, and you're dangerous to these kids. These things that you believe, that you can't prove, that you just want to shout from the rooftops because you want people to look at you and validate you and treat you like you're some valuable person, even though you haven't done anything, they are going to hurt other people. They're going to hurt children. Right now, we've only seen a few examples, like the school that was teaching young white kids that they're oppressors and young black kids that they're oppressed, which is fucking up all of them in that situation. Nobody is coming out a winner in a situation like that. You people really need to step back for a second and think about what you're accomplishing. What are you supposedly fighting for? And what are you actually doing? What results are you actually getting? Because if your goal is equality, if your goal is a quote-unquote peaceful future, and you are not getting that, you are consistently causing the precise opposite, you might want to reevaluate what you're doing. You might want to reevaluate your tactics. You might want to look in a mirror and ask yourself if what you're doing is truly right. It is entirely possible to fight for a good cause in the wrong way. It is entirely possible to represent something that is generally good or even logical, but to support it in a way that is detrimental and dangerous. I just really like people to stop and think about that. Everyone, not just one particular group, everyone, to stop and think about that for a second. This is Drachona, reminding you to treat people based on who they are and how they act. Thank you.